Welcome to Behind the Catch Fence. I'm your host, David Hoffman. We're on to episode 76, and it'll be a first for us today. We've had drivers and personalities from across all phases of motorsports join us here in the past, from NASCAR, IndyCar, NHRA, World of Outlaws, other dirt racing, Australian supercars, IMSA. I mean, it's just been a real treat through the first 75 episodes. Well, today we have our first ever Monster Jam driver on the show. Now, Monster Jam is a sport I grew up watching. I'm sure a lot of you guys remember when it used to air on the Speed channel back in the day. I feel like it was always like 5 p.m. during the weekdays. I mean, it's crazy how good we had it back then with Speed. Well, today we have Bryce Kenny joining us. He's currently the driver of Great Clips Mohawk Warrior, and he has been for a number of years now. Today we're talking all about his journey to monster truck racing, writing a book, public speaking, and so much more. So without further delay, go ahead and sit back, relax, grab a snack, and enjoy this episode with Bryce Kenny. So Bryce, thanks for taking the time for joining the show today. First Monster Jam guests, really excited about this. So I want to get to know a little bit more about you. So kind of going into it a little bit, just where did your love for racing begin?
Man, I always say, and first of all, thanks for having me. It's a big honor. I grew up weed eating the fence line of my grandfather's drag strip in Clay City, Kentucky. And I loved it, man. I would spend all my summers up in Kentucky. I'm from North Carolina and still live in North Carolina now. But man, I just fell in love with the culture of motorsports up there. And so at 8 years old, I'm driving a junior dragster. I'm working at the track all week long. And I remember at the end of every summer, I would, collect all my hours. I don't remember what I got paid, but I remember walking home with like a $300 check, and I just thought I was rich. And when you're 9 years old and you walk away with a summer job at all, and you get, paid anything, that's awesome. But yeah, I mean, I fell in love with the culture. And then at 13 years old, my grandfather sold the track and actually bought a Top Fuel car. And that's where, man, that's where all of a sudden it went from just, this is what I do during the summers, to this is what I want to do the rest of my life, when I got to kind of see the professional side of motorsports and specifically in drag racing. So yeah, my career has taken a lot of different turns, but it really did start with drag racing. And man, you never forget the first time you feel a Top Fuel car go down the track. And actually it was Clay Millican. If people remember back in the day, he just shared something on a social. It was stealthsponsor.com. That was the first Top Fuel car I ever saw in person. I think it was in Rochester, New York. And we were up there in a top dragster class that my grandfather was driving in. And I saw his sponsor before Clay Millican ever made it big and found the big money. His fuel car was the first one I ever saw. It was love at first sight.
I love that. It's funny because now he's defending U.S. Nationals winner too, so it's pretty cool.
Yes.
Yeah, and kind of going along with obviously you mentioned Clay Millican, you growing up around drag racing, drag strip. Just how far did you end up going with drag racing?
Well, I got my Top Fuel license, and I was trying to make it right when IHRA was kind of ended their nitro class, and they were started doing nitro jams. And a lot of people don't know, the same company that owns Monster Jam, it's a company by the name of Feld Entertainment, Feld. They're the ones who at one point bought IHRA. I want to say it was in 2008, maybe nine. Don't quote me on that, but they bought it and they started nitro jams, and their goal was to basically take the Monster Jam model and apply it to drag racing. So they wanted I heard at one point they wanted 50 Top Fuel cars to go around and basically do a touring model for nitro. And obviously, anyone that knows a sport, I remember I was working with Bruce Litton at the time on his Lucas Oil dragster in the Nitro Jam series for IHRA. And that was in 09 and 2010, I believe. And I remember hearing about this stuff and going, who's this Feld Entertainment company? What makes them think they can own and operate 50 Top Fuel cars and all this stuff? Obviously, it was a great try, but it just didn't work. And then they sold IHRA in 2011, and as we all know, the nitro classes never came back. But that whole time, I had gotten my Top Fuel license. We were doing match racing, and I was trying to find enough money to make it over to the NHRA. And that was when the chassis continued to get thicker, like the requirements for chassis sizing and tubing they were having all the crashes and wrecks, and so they kept increasing like the chassis. Uh, uh, I was going to say width, but the roll bar size. And I remember thinking the front half of our dragster was legal for NHRA and the back half wasn't, maybe vice versa. But I was genuinely I was trying everything I could to make it over to the NHRA. And I had 7 different jobs at that time of my life just trying to make that dream work. And then finally in 2011, it was coming off the backside of that massive recession. I just could not make it work. And I remember going to my grandfather who owned it. I was kind of operating it and funneling all the bills and making the match races work. But I remember going to him and saying, man, don't keep this stuff just for me. Like if you need to sell it and get out of it, get out of it. Like, and if it takes me 50 years to get back into motorsports, so be it. I'll do what you did, right? And he did finally sell it, and it felt like kind of the death of a dream at that time. And I went off into corporate America before, and that was long before Monster Jam ever called me, and I had never even been to a Monster Jam event at that point. And my goal then after that change went to corporate America again. I thought I'll just work really hard if it takes me 50 years to go create wealth, and then I'll just own my own team and do it on my own. And of course, that's not how my career path went, but that was kind of the original diversion after drag racing didn't work out.
How hard was that for you to kind of, I'm assuming that's probably a hard pill to swallow at the time. Yeah. Did you have like a thought of, okay, what else could I do in motorsports drag racing? Was there that thought, or kind of how far did that go?
Yeah. So my first thought was, well, I'll just, become a crew chief. Like I'll go on the mechanical side because I loved it, man. When my grandfather bought that Top Fuel car in 20 I can't remember when he bought it. I think it was 2000. But anyway, I think I was 13 years old and I was just cleaning the car. I was like, let me come with you guys to these national events. And then I started helping out on the bottom end of the engine. And then at 15, I was pulling our clutch. I was our clutch guy at 15 years old. And so I did that for a number of years. And then all of a sudden I was, I pulled cylinder heads, and then I was a top end guy. Like I did everything around it before I started driving it. And I think I was 20 years old when I started driving. So I had 7 years of just, I know those engines. I loved ripping them apart between rounds. And man, it was hard because I thought, yeah, okay, maybe I'll just go the mechanical route. But I was ready to settle down, and I was dating my now wife. And I had a really wise mentor that came to me and he said, Bryce, this might be your last chance ever to give up your dream to show her that she'll always be more important. And that was a big struggle for me because I was like, yeah, but this is my heart. And if she's not on board, then really is she the right one for me and all this stuff. And thankfully I got smart on it because she was never asking me to give it up. I think a lot of people in motorsports, they struggle with kind of like a non-supportive spouse. Thankfully, I've never had that issue because I remember when I gave up everything to say, look, I'm going to kind of get my house in order first and that way for the rest of my life, if I get back into this in 45 years, I want my wife to know that she's more important. And when Monster Jam did call me and I had the chance to leave my corporate job, I took a 30% pay cut to go and do that full time with Monster Jam. My wife was the one who said, Bryce, you were built for motorsports. Don't worry about it. Like we've got this. That's where God wants you to be, is over in motorsports. Don't be afraid of it. Let's go do it. So because I gave up that dream completely, even though I wasn't driving in 2011 anymore, I was going to say, well, I'm just going to find another route and stay in the sport. It was my chance to kind of put it on the chopping block, show my wife that she'll always be more important to me than anything. And that came back within, I want to say, like I said, 5 years. And the last 8 years of us as a family working through the demands of being full-time in Monster Jam, man, that requires a lot of support at home. And I've always had that support, thankfully, because I think it's because we kind of started our marriage off at the right foot, knowing, hey, you're always more important. She knows she could come to me at any point and say, Bryce, I'm exhausted. I'm tired. I want you to give up Monster Jam. I've already given up the dream for her. She knows I would do it again if she asked, but that's probably why she doesn't ask, right? And so that's something I'm very thankful that I had a wise mentor in my life at the time that encouraged me to kind of give up the dream for her in that moment, and it set us up for the rest of my life.
Yeah, so you mentioned about just with with your wife and kind of having that support of if you don't go, that you would be able to willingly just put it behind you, all things motorsports. Just, I mean, that's hard. I'm sure there's so many instances, and for myself, for instance, we decided to drop drop everything and go to totally a different state. We've never been to a different state, all this other stuff because we wanted to pursue different things. I'm like, hey, I'm still fully supportive of all this, like, and I'm sure for you, like that probably helped in a lot of ways just to, like not in a way build trust, but in a way just like build that bond in a way too.
Yeah, I mean, think about the battles that you get to go through with your spouse and the unknowns. Like, I think everyone is a lot of times they're scared of the unknowns. I have grown to love them, and I didn't love them when I was in my 20s. My 30s have been totally different. I don't even know that I'm doing all that much stuff different, David. It feels like I just am doing the same things, but I'm getting bigger and better results. I do think I'm improving at the things that I was trying to do in my 20s, right? Like public speaking and all the things I'm trying to do, like just from my own personal brand, I guess. But it seems like the results are better. But I cannot fathom how difficult it would be to not have the support at home. And I think in the motorsports world, a lot of people do not have the support that they really need to go out there and be effective. And sometimes you just need to slow down and say, how can I involve my partner? How can I involve my spouse at a level that they want to be involved in? Because sometimes they just think people are, oh, my spouse just wants me to give it up. Well, maybe they're just kind of testing you a little bit. Maybe they just want to see if you would give it up, right? And the question is, would you give it up for them? And a lot of us guys, the answer to that would be no. And I think that that's a mistake because if we can show that family's more important, at the end of the day, they're the only ones if we do this right. Like if we go out there and we win the U.S. Nationals and we go out and do all this crazy stuff and we're the biggest name in motorsports, but we lose our family, I don't think that that's worth it. So I think that the motorsports community needs to do a little bit of a better job at slowing down. And I think a big part of that is mentorship, like having the right mentors to be able to coach people through that process. And unfortunately, there's too many people that have just done it wrong. I hope John Force writes a book because that's the thing that he said he would do differently is not sacrifice his family along the way. I think it's a miracle that the Force family is still together in the way that they are, and where
Yeah.
the daughters are still in drag racing and involved in that stuff. He needs to write a book just to simply say, look, this is what I got wrong, but now this is what we're doing right to keep the family together. Because I think a lot of us need that coaching.
Yeah, because that's a great, point with Force, especially because I mean that guy is synonymous everywhere. But yeah, they're
Yeah.
and it's been I mean we've read it before everything else, but they're still together, and it's just if anything they're thriving and better than ever, and it's just been a really cool testament, and just and just with just with marriage in general, it is tough because because a lot of times like maybe in your timing you're like, man, this could be my only opportunity with this certain thing. But it's like if you're like, let
Yep.
me just trust God on this, even though it sounds like, oh my gosh, is this the actual like last final time? And then all of a sudden all this stuff just happens to all work out. And you're like, all right, okay, yeah, that's why I should have just taken a back seat a little bit.
That's right.
Was
That's exactly right.
And for you, obviously, you ended up going. I saw you went to Campbell University. Was it the Fighting Campbells? That's what they're called, correct? Or
Yeah, yeah, very intimidating, David. This is the
yeah,
Fighting Camels. Yeah.
I went to Liberty University, so we had to
Oh,
play them in
nice.
football a couple times. So you're like, what are the Fighting Camels? You're like, okay, that's interesting, but
Yes,
always
yeah, yeah.
interesting.
Liberty. I almost went to Liberty. I looked at Liberty and Campbell. Those were the two Division I schools that were recruiting me for soccer. I probably shouldn't have gone and played Division I. I was good, but I wasn't good enough to do probably Division I. So, but I sometimes I think about how much fun Liberty would have been.
It's a pretty cool school just with all the different things they have. But obviously, Campbell, it worked out for you. I know you ended up having like a career-ending injury with in soccer.
Yep.
I've had an injury as well for in like cross country or whatever. Just but like for you like to go through like an injury like that, how do you feel that? I guess in that moment, what did that feel like? Was it like an end of the world type of thing, or what did that feel
Mm.
like?
Man, this sounds weird, but it was a relief
Hmm.
because I'm terrible at quitting things. It's just not something that's in my DNA. I say I was miserable at that level playing because I felt like I was wasting my time. I really wanted to move on to my career in drag racing and in motorsports. And I just did not know why I was there. Right. And the culture wasn't very good. I did not have a lot of respect for my coach. And so it was just hard to like buy into that culture. And it was a business at that point. But I knew I would be there as long as I could keep playing. So in a way, I think it was a bit of a relief. But what's so cool though is it's almost like, and again, I know people may not be listening to this for any spiritual guidance or belief set. Maybe they don't believe in God or whatever they might do. And I'm not here to necessarily push my own beliefs on people. However, I don't know how people can get through life without believing that there's a higher power controlling and like being able to like navigate our lives for us. Because um, when I got almost released from that chapter of my life, one of the last people that I hosted on his soccer recruiting trip was a guy named Morgan Kane. Morgan grew up with the Gravedigger family. And so even though Morgan and I never really played together because of my drag racing background and he had this Monster Jam background, whenever he ended up coming to Campbell and playing there, but like I said, we didn't play together because I got hurt and left after my sophomore season. But whenever I officially got out of drag racing, because I left Campbell, got my Top Fuel license, pursued that for a number of years. Whenever we sold everything, he and I were talking on Facebook, and he said, "Man, he found out that I'd gotten out of driving the Top Fuel car, and he said you need to talk to Monster Jam." And I was like, I don't know. I've never even been to an event. I'm not sure that that's really what I'm looking for. He said, no. He said, you would like this product. You'd like the event. And that's what actually got me introduced to Monster Jam. Had I not been at Campbell University for those first 2 years and 2 seasons, I probably would have never gotten this chance to be in Monster Jam for the last almost 9 years and doing this. And it all started with playing soccer at Campbell University. And the moment I met Morgan, it's like that next semester I got hurt and I almost felt like I got released to go on and do that next thing in life, which is kind of wild to think about.
Hmm. And it's so interesting because yeah, it's like I mean, soccer and Monster Jam have absolutely nothing to do with each other or university or whatever it is. It's just so interesting. And I guess from that point on, what does it take to get into Monster Jam? What were those first couple
Mm.
steps to do that?
Well, they first called me when Morgan first connected me with them. They said, "Hey, timing's not great for us, but if it is, we'll call you back." I thought, okay, that's fine. I went into a corporate job placing C-suite executives into private equity-backed portfolio companies, which I know is like, what in the world are you
What
even
was
talking about?
the
Of course, the natural progression. Collegiate soccer, top fuel driving, to C-suite recruiting. But it was wild because I spent the next 4 years, even after I had talked to Monster Jam, I had spent 4 years talking to some of the top executives in corporate America. Every day I was talking to CEOs every day. Like, so I got to look in their companies and recruit CEOs out of companies and place them with my clients. And I got to understand how they think and how they talk. And I got to, understand that side of business. I felt like I got an MBA for those 4 years. And then Monster Jam called me back. And I'll never forget the phone call. And they said, "Hey, Bryce, we're interested in maybe having you come up to Monster Jam University and test in a truck." And I thought, well, and my first answer was, how much is this going to cost me? Because remember, I had 7 jobs back in my top fuel pursuits, trying to make that work. I had settled down. We were pregnant with our first child. And I was like, I'm not interested in this costing me tens of thousands of dollars again, like it used to and back in drag racing. And they said, no, 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 we've got everything ready. And I remember asking them again, I said, so just like a flight and a hotel is all I would, have to charge? I'm thinking, man, for $1,000, I might do this. And they kind of got frustrated a little bit. They're like, no, we'll buy you a flight and a hotel. Look, can you just be off of work and be in Paxton, Illinois and test a truck? And I'm like, well, heck yeah, I can do that. Who would say no to an all expense paid trip to test out a Monster Jam truck? And so we got all that scheduled, and I went up, and I didn't hear anything after my first event or after my first test week. I had a blast. David, I didn't think anything would come of it. I genuinely thought to myself, 10 years from now, I'll be in a Buffalo Wild Wings somewhere and with my buddies, and like Monster Jam will be on TV, and I'll get to nudge somebody and go, dude, I drove one of those a long time ago, just for 1 week, but I got to drive one. I literally thought that's all this experience would be. And so again, I went up there, and apparently I did well, but they never told me how I did. It was another 3 months of silence. Never heard a word from Monster Jam. And they finally called me back and they said, "Hey, we've got a truck in mind for you. And we want you to come back up to the test facility and do some specific stuff in our on our arena track." And man, it has snowballed from there. Like I said, that was 8 years ago, maybe it was 9 years ago, that I went up to Monster Jam University and learned how to test it. And they literally put you out in a test field and say, "Go hit that jump." And go, and then they tell you to go hit it again, hit it differently. And it's just, you start to develop that muscle memory where nothing else that you've ever experienced is like jumping a 12,000 pound truck 40 feet in the air. And it's just, sometimes it's trial by error.
I was gonna say, what is that first feeling? Like, because obviously, going 200, 300 miles an hour on a top fuel dragster is one thing, but to go and manhandle a 12,000 pound truck, try and jump the thing, and then just, what was that first jump like? How did that feel? Was this kind of like once you hit it once, then it's kind of like the football thing where once you get hit once, then it's game on type of thing. Like, what was
Yeah.
that feeling like?
Oh, it hurt. It hurt. But you know why it hurt? It hurt so bad because I wasn't near tight enough. So a lot of guys in drag racing, it's hilarious. I remember Tommy Johnson Jr. driving our dragster for a match race. And I remember buckling him in, and this was when I was still getting my license, and we were doing some match racing stuff with Bruce Litton, and Tommy Johnson came in, TJ came in to do that, and I remember tightening him up, and he was the tightest driver I had ever seen get in a drag car, right? Funny cars, all that stuff. People are so loose in these belts, and it's a problem. TJ's not. He was like, I don't want to be able to breathe in this thing. I thought it was so weird until I jumped a Monster Jam truck. And I thought to myself, man, I've got to get tighter to the point where I cannot breathe in this truck. We literally have ratchets on our lap belts, where we have to ratchet ourselves into the seat to be able to be tight enough. And then after that, you got to take a deep breath, exhale, get all the air out of your lungs, and then pull those shoulder straps a little bit more. The tighter you are, the better. My Hans device has no slack in it on my straps. I mean, my helmet is against my Hans device. All these things that I do think that in drag racing, drivers need to be a lot tighter. But I've learned through Monster Jam, if you control the pelvis through the safety equipment and through the straps, you control your spine. So we've got to get better too about controlling the pelvis, and like if we can secure it and anchor the pelvis the right way, then in a crash it can go a lot better for the driver. So all this stuff, honestly, that Monster Jam has learned has now kind of siphoned over and applied to these other motorsports to make drivers safer.
Hmm. Is there anything from you kind of mentioned with how it's kind of bled into other motorsports, just from your perspective, just coming into Monster Jam, just was there anything that you were able to bring in from drag racing to, driving a monster truck?
Yeah. The Top Fuel car was always so violent. It was It was scary, right? But in a fun way.
In a
You
fun
just knew
way.
that car was trying to kill you.
Hmm.
Transferring over to Monster Jam, I always thought, man, these trucks are fun. Now you've got to respect them, because just like anything, like it'll get away from you. And trust me, I've rung my bell way more often in Monster Jam than I ever did in drag racing. But I've never sat in a Monster Jam truck and been intimidated by the machinery like I was sometimes in the Nitro car. But I think the biggest thing that I brought into the sport wasn't actually the experience. That's not true. With drag racing, I failed so much trying to find sponsorship that whenever I went into my corporate job and was talking to CEOs all day, that's what developed my business acumen. And that's what also developed my desire to work with partners differently. So I feel like motorsports as a whole is kind of stuck in the 90s when it comes to marketing, and it's not, it's no longer just, oh, give me money to put your company on the side of my race car and we're gonna get you exposure. And now, like, people are getting at least creative enough to realize that social media is a powerful tool, but people are still thinking about it from exposure. Like, they need to change their mindset from thinking about exposure to experience. And if people are trying to find money and partners, they need to understand how to partner with a brand to give potential customers an experience with that brand. Or, right, that's more of a B2C take, or go after more of a B2B take. Like, how can you help their employees have a unique experience through sponsoring you in motorsports? And so we got to go from exposure to experience, and doing that creatively. It's not an easy task to do, but I do think that there's not a very crowded highway of people trying to do that. So that would set someone apart just by trying to create an experience for a brand. And through my failures through drag racing, of not going and finding sponsorship and getting told no after no after no, and walking out of corporate boardrooms with my tail between my legs because I got another no. No one was taking a chance on me in this big dream of mine. But then going into corporate America, getting to listen to CEOs talk and looking at all these companies and how they operate and what they look for, right? And then taking the failures from drag racing, the corporate experience on how to deal with C-suite executives. Now I've pulled all of that experience over into Monster Jam. And that's why I get to work with our partners, not only with Monster Jam, but my own personal brands, because I understand how to give potential customers and how to give those brands internally a unique experience that they can't get anywhere else unless they work with me. And that's really the golden goose that I want to help other motorsports people see, and then help them develop that as well.
Because that's always an ever evolving target. It's always moving one way or the other. And once you do hit that mark and hit that, it's like that's your goal. Like you said, it's the golden goose. It's just one
Yeah.
of those things that's invaluable. And I noticed this the amount of like stuff that you do, like whether it's with like with Great Clips, Mohawk Warrior, or whatever else it is. It's just interesting because it's like because you feel like there's a lot of like drivers, teams, no matter what the series is, that can do a lot of really good things. They're like, it's right there. It's just, it's
Yep.
interesting. And it's something that, like maybe this podcast or another, something else will kind of trigger that or kind of prompt that. But, it's just been really interesting to, just to see how it has been, whether it's been stuck in the past or how it can be pushed into the future.
Yeah. Well, I'll tell you this. I mean, and maybe this will help someone out there, but Great Clips has been with us for 8 years. And they have not been with us 8 years because we've driven customers into their salons. We have done that, but it's because of the internal cultural impact that we've had. They have 35,000 stylists, 1,000 franchisees. They have included me and involved me in a way on my speaking stuff that has tied me to those 35,000 stylists in a way that's really, really special. We've gotten to elevate their culture internally through me being their Monster Jam driver. Like, that's so unique, but we've hit it at a different way, and we've changed the experience that brand has with their stylists. And that's a very powerful position to be in for anybody. Otherwise, I think it would have lasted 2 or 3 years. But the fact that Great Clips has been with Monster Jam for 8, that goes to show you that we've really captured that experience in a good way.
We've kind of mentioned with Great Clips, Mohawk Warrior. I guess I totally forgot to look exactly. How many years have been running Great Clips Mohawk Warrior? Has it been your entire career, or have you run a couple different trucks along the way?
My very first year was in a truck called Monster Mutt.
Oh
And
yeah, yep.
yes, and so that's a dog themed truck. Think Mutt Cuts and from Dumb and Dumber when it goes airborne. That's how I felt all that year, and it was just a hobby. I was still in my corporate job, just working remotely on Fridays, and did 12 events. Wasn't even invited to the Monster Jam World Finals that year. And then later that fall is when Great Clips came around, and full circle too. You'll love this story. The reason I got chosen for that Great Clips truck was Clay Millican. So it was kind of wild because I had no intention to leave my corporate job, and Monster Jam kept calling me, and I kept saying no. Like, I'm not interested in leaving my corporate job for a sponsored truck. They didn't tell me it was Great Clips. They didn't tell me anything. Clay remembered me from our IHRA days, and he knew my grandfather very, very well. So Clay and I weren't necessarily friends, like close friends back then, but my grandfather and he were really, really close. And so he just knew I was from good stock. Clay had a relationship with Great Clips, and the individual that managed that, who was Clay's team owner for a while, Doug Stringer. Doug ran the Great Clips Motorsports marketing account for years, back in NASCAR days and all that stuff. And so Clay had put my name forward to Doug and said, don't let them put anybody else in that truck but Bryce Kenny. I didn't know any of this at the time, and that's why Monster Jam though kept calling me. Finally, to the point where Monster Jam said, "Hey, Great Clips has chosen you as this driver. Like, what's it gonna take for you to take over this truck and be the driver of that?" But I owe that to Clay, because he went to bat for me, because Monster Jam barely knew me enough to put me in this big new sponsored truck like that. But it's because Clay was adamant about it. And just a shout out to him too, because I remember talking to him whenever all that kind of came out, and that was the summer. That was no. That was the year. I think that was the year of his son getting killed, Dalton, and he was in a motorcycle accident. And Clay admitted to me, he said, "Look," he said, he said, I don't know how this sounds, but it's just, we had a great conversation about the Great Clips partnership with Monster Jam, and he kind of revealed to me, and I'm glad he did, that the original plan was for Dalton to be in that truck. That was very, very hard, because I remember Dalton as a kid at those IHRA races, running around the pit area and being, 4 years old, and hearing about his career through ATV stuff while as he was aging and getting older. That was a very heavy moment for me, because I realized, man, Clay had this big plan for his son to kind of, to go into the corporate environment, the business side of Monster Jam, and then just that tragedy struck, and now he's putting my name forward as the guy. Like, it was almost too heavy. And so, but it was unique that it was a very humbling moment that I got to kind of sit back with Clay and say, and just imagine how awesome Dalton would have been with this, and he was a huge loss to the motorsports community as a whole when he passed.
And I can only imagine, like, especially for you to have that type of, I guess, connection with Clay, to the point that Clay was like, "Hey, I want you to be the person that, that does drive that truck." And I'm sure even to this day, you're still, thinking and like really like thankful and just very humble about the fact that, it's been 8 years now that you've been driving this truck and had this great partnership with Great Clips and everything else. And, I
Yeah.
guess, yeah, for you, just how cool is it to have just that type of partnership in a sport, in any motorsport, where sponsors can come and go and just brands and identities can come and go, just for you to kind of have this stable ground in, with that truck.
Yeah, it's great. I think that what the future holds, I think that we always have to look at everything as super fragile. The other Monster Jam drivers, it's funny, they don't look at partnerships the same way that the rest of us do. Meaning, for instance, we were talking about Clay Millican, right? I mean, he lands a deal and he's automatically looking for the next year and saying, he's got to keep the pipeline full. And you kind of kill what you eat in motorsports, or you eat what you kill. Sorry, I said that backwards. In motorsports, right? You eat what you kill. We're all hunters. Monster Jam drivers as a whole, like, they almost cannot relate to me at how fragile I look at partnerships, to say, look, anything can change. And as soon as we sign a contract, I imagine this hourglass got flipped over, knowing that the sand is going to run out. If I don't do enough to flip that sand over again, and every good thing comes to an end. Right. And so to me, I'm thankful with the Monster Jam product that I'm not having to sell sponsorships. I get to sell experience. It is a massive brand. It's a global brand, right? We'll do 400 events in 20 countries this year. Right now, they're in Scotland, right? I'm not in Scotland. I get to be home, but the brand is global. So they are always out there partnering with people. I think it's the best product, because it's not just exposure. That people come on board with Monster Jam, and they create this massive experience for families with their brand. That's why it's powerful. But we need to get the message out there more, and other motorsports needs to do it. They need to, I see more dragsters and Top Fuel cars. It's less about the name on the side, and it's more about, can we theme some of this stuff out? Right? Like the old funny cars back in the day, they always had, brute force, like they always had themed cars, and it allowed fans to attach themselves and cheer for that in a way that you only see in Monster Jam now, where people cheer for Gravedigger because they love Gravedigger, right? And we got to get back to some creative things with that, with motorsports where fans can attach. We need the drama back in the pits too, right? For NHRA stuff and all this different, Formula One drivers need to get off their high horse and go and sign more autographs, right?
Yeah.
NASCAR drivers, they get off. Look, you get paid millions of dollars, and I sign more autographs in one weekend than a NASCAR driver signs their entire year. That's pathetic to me. And I get paid a fraction of what they get paid. And I wouldn't change my side. I'm looking at these drivers saying, you're not giving your customers and the fan base, you are not giving them the experience that you could be giving them. Therefore, you are not making the impact that you could be making, right? I'm not a big believer in the NASCAR product. I think it's overinflated. I'm not surprised that NASCAR is struggling as far as fan bases go. I think Formula One, the best thing was that documentary, right, of the Drive to Survive. But things have got to change. And the fans are the ultimate customers that we have. We've got to get back to serving them better.
And that's you bring up a lot of good points because I know first off with like the branding of stuff. I know like for IMSA, this one car, I had no idea what AO Racing was, but I know they got this T-Rex looking car, and everyone loves T-Rexes, loves dinosaurs, and it's green, bright green, like hard to miss. And
Yeah.
it's just interesting because they've had a lot of fun with that on social media. But then you mentioned with just the different brands and just with like the drivers and that's the one thing that kind of drew me to, for instance, IndyCar. Like when I was younger and was, on the autograph scene before I do what I do now, just I remember it's like nothing was too big, nothing was like, nothing was above them in that way. So they're signing away, and then there's, and yeah, like you mentioned with like NASCAR, that's what I have noticed. It's kind of more just stale, and you want to have the personalities too. And I feel like Monster Jam personalities galore, like yourself or anyone else. And then there's like IndyCar, and there's these different people, and I think you can tap into that more. And I think, yeah, maybe there's a different way, there's a different approach, but it's just, it's just one of those things where when you get it right, it's booming, but like there's so many that
Yeah.
it's just, yeah,
Yeah, it's easy. It's easy to get right and it's easy to get wrong.
yeah.
And I think we've got to reignite the call to remember what we're doing. And what we're doing is we're inspiring the next generation to grow motorsports bigger than we've grown it. And we're not doing that. I do not think we're doing a good enough job of that because we're not stepping back and helping people along. We're just trying to look for the next check because the checks are harder to find. And that's why I go back to what I said. Like, we've got to slow down and realize that to stop thinking about everything from exposure and start thinking about it from experience. And if we can give fans a better experience and we can give brands a unique experience, then we can grow our sport and people will bring more sponsorship, not because it's cool to be involved with Formula One. They're going to do it because we are giving them 10x their money back, right? That's where we grow. And that's how we get more butts in the seats.
Yeah, every single point I agree on. It is cool because I've been to one Monster Jam event. It was 2 years ago in Syracuse at the Carrier Dome. I don't know what it's
Oh,
called now,
nice.
but yep. So it was my wife and I's first time going there. At first, when you hear that loud thing, like the noise, especially in the dome, you're like, oh my gosh, okay, I don't know if I can handle this. But then you get into it, and it's one of the coolest experiences. And maybe we'll end up going to another one here for the next couple
Yeah.
of months.
Was
But
I driving at that one?
I don't. That's why I looked back on a couple days ago. I don't think you were at that time. No,
If
but
I wasn't, it was the one of the few Syracuse events I didn't do because
okay.
that's one of my favorite places. And for whatever reason, they always give me good scores up there too. They love some Great Clips Mohawk Warrior. But yeah, we'll get you back out to Syracuse. What was the best part about the event for you? Like the most, not even just the best from a fan perspective, but what was the thing that you were surprised about the most?
I'd say just how involved like that. Whether it's the in game, kind of in game like host are, and like, there's always that factor of like,
Mm.
how would you like that, or like it's always like every single time a driver does something, it's like the fans are reaping the benefits because they're say how about that Monster Jam fans, and they're like kind of like doing the score thing. We're always on our phones clicking to see. All right, I think yes, yeah, and obviously I think Gravedigger won or something, but
Of
it's
course, of
whatever.
course.
Yeah, of course. Whatever it was just like you just felt like they were there for you. It wasn't just here you can see it. Like it was a for you type of like show, which is really cool.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah, I think it's what separates us out, which is really great. I've learned a lot. I'm so glad about this chapter of my Monster Jam life. And I ask myself a lot, like, will I ever be back in a top fuel car? And the answer to that is absolutely. I just don't know. I'm not in a rush to do it. Like, I'm not trying to leave the Monster Jam world because this world has been so good to me. And I am looking forward to continuing to I want to change the world through motorsports. And right now, I think the biggest megaphone in motorsports is Monster Jam. I just think we have the best global reach right now, the best product. But, would I love to hit the throttle again on a 10,000 horsepower, dragster? Absolutely. And I will. I just, if it's 30 years from now, then that's okay too. But I always love cheering for my buddies in that and making friends. I feel like I've made better friends now I'm in Monster Jam than even when I drove a fuel car. Like, yeah, I knew Clay and I knew all them, but I grew up and I was so young and I was fly on the wall. Now I get to interact with the Force family, and I get to interact more with Clay and like a bunch of team owners and just people that I've just met because our worlds kind of are connected that way. So I'm looking forward to a vibrant future with both motorsports.
You've done a lot of Monster Jam, Great Clips Mohawk Warrior. Gonna have to get a diecast over here. That's why I'm gonna be going to Target here soon for one. Um,
Nice.
but yeah, just final couple of questions. You wrote a book, you do some public speaking. So I guess kind of first start off with the book. How did the idea, spark in your head to go ahead and do that?
Twofold. My brother was the one that was constantly trying to convince me to do it. And then secondly was during COVID. I remember seeing a post of somebody saying, during the pandemic, everyone was like, "Oh, the pieces of art that could change the rest of your family's life is probably going to be written or created while everyone's stuck at home." And maybe it's your next book or your next video series or something. And I remember thinking, you know what, I could take this time to write a book. I wrote the whole book in 2 weeks. It was during the pandemic. I was actually on the road doing some regional fall convention talks for Great Clips. And I wrote the whole book in 2 weeks. Now I rewrote it about 4 times. And that first edition I wrote in 2 weeks will never see the light of day, but I greatly improved it as I went. But I am really proud of it. And it's called Geared for Life. And it's where I share all of my personal gears that I found along the way. Cause I'm a big believer that, I don't believe that life is about getting it all right all the time. I think we try to rely on old information and old gears that have kind of gotten us to where we are today. And we've got to shift and we've got to get unstuck by saying, what do we believe? Our beliefs are what drive our actions, and our actions drive our habits and get our results. And so we need to get back to our core and saying, what do I really believe? Like, and it could be something as genuine as about motorsports. Like, do you believe that motorsports marketing is all about exposure, or is it about experience, right? That's a different gear that you could find from a professional standpoint, but it's not just from a career standpoint. It's kind of what we personally believe about, family coming first, and what we talked about before about my relationship with Mackenzie and how I still to this day, like, I want to put family first. Like, that's a gear that I have to make myself shift into sometimes. Otherwise, I'll just make decisions based on, what I'm going to make, instead of saying, how do I protect my family in this decision? And so that's what the book's all about. I share my personal 7 gears. My hope is that the reader gets to the end of the book, and yeah, they'll steal a few of my gears, but they'll uncover a few of their own, and that'll help them kind of shift into that best version of themselves they've always wanted to become.
And you had the cool opportunity for John Force to actually look at it,
Yeah.
and I saw a post about that. He did read the whole book, wasn't that what that was? Or
Yeah.
yeah, tell us about
Actually, this
that.
is the cover. So this is his endorsement on
There
it.
we go.
So it says love this stuff. And then he's actually quoted on my back cover. So we got Dennis Anderson that gave a quote, the creator of Gravedigger. And then John Force, the shortened endorsement, says it takes heart, patience, and getting the right people around you when you're chasing your dreams. Geared for Life will help you get in that mindset and make those moves. John Force, 16-time NHRA champion. So yeah, I mean, John loved it. And I tell you who's the reader though in that family is Ashley. So Ashley was one of the first people that I got to kind of take a look at it, and she's the one that made it happen of actually getting the book to John and making him read through it and give that endorsement. So shout out to Ashley Force. She is a huge asset to the motorsports community still, and we need to get her back in a funny car. I don't think she's interested, but we need to get her back in one.
I think isn't she pretty occupied with the content creation over there, it seems like, but I mean,
Well,
that would be
between
cool.
that, being married to Danny Hood, who is hysterical. I love that guy. He is awesome. We need to get a camera in front of Danny Hood. Like he's great. And then they've got all those Force Hood, the Hood boys, right? I think they call them the Hoodlums. And they're out there chasing their dreams and junior drag racing and all that stuff too, which is pretty cool. I try to get them out to as many Monster Jams as they're available because they want to come. So it's fun getting them some tickets when I go out to Anaheim and get to stop by and see them too when I go out to the NHRA events.
And yeah, we kind of mentioned a little bit ago with motivational speaking and going across the country for doing stuff like that. Just how do you go and prepare in something like that and just knowing how to convey your words that'll resonate with someone else?
Good question. You have to be very passionate about public speaking if you're going to be a professional speaker. And man, it's not that I've gotten it wrong a lot, but because it's funny. I think the standard is a little bit low and the expectations are low when you're a Monster Jam driver and you're stepping on stage with a microphone. Everyone just thinks you're going to sound like Larry the Cable Guy. So I think their expectations are low. And then all of a sudden you put a talk together that blows them away. And I think it really resonates with people because their defenses are down and they're there to have fun, but they're also there to get some mental nuggets. And I love putting a talk together because it kind of cuts me open and it shows me the areas not only just that I believe, but that I want to get better at. And it helps me understand how to communicate that to maybe help someone else. And that's really all I do. So, but yeah, it's been so much fun. And I'll go speak to church events. I'll go speak to corporate events. I leave right after Vancouver this weekend for Monster Jam. I'll go and speak at a Choice Hotels group, which is, they own all the Sleep Inn, Clarion hotels, all that stuff. I go speak to their owners council on Monday in New Orleans. And then I'll do another event for them in Williamsburg. So that's starting to really grow and expand when it comes to the public speaking world. But I know I'll do that when I'm done driving a race car. And I love the idea of being able to kind of build that personal brand and understand that we can give. I've done it with Great Clips for 8 years. And I've gotten to speak to a lot of their organization at different times and different sizes, up to about 4,000 people at their national convention. And I've just become addicted to being able to formulate a talk that's impacting people and impacts the audience. And I just can't wait for my next one.
And final question for me, just wrapping up all this, all the fun gift that we've kind of created here, just for you, just between, run a Monster Jam, doing public speaking, writing the book, just I guess, what is the lasting feel that you want everyone just in, whoever sees you, whoever talks to you, what do you want that lasting impression to be about yourself or, or just who you are?
Ah, I think people would describe me as a good man, but not necessarily always a nice guy. And I say that in almost a comedic way because I want to be a nice guy too. And I think some people think I'm a nice guy, and that's all great. But I want them to think I'm a good man first. I want my kids to not have to look outside of the home for inspiration. And they might, right? I don't want them to only look at me and me chasing my dreams. I don't want them to have to look outside of my home for that inspiration. And I want them. I sat on my porch this morning at 7 a.m. with my 7-year-old son, and he was asking me questions about, like, do you think I can really be a Monster Jam driver when I grow up? And now he probably wants to do that because I do that. But I get to talk to him about chasing his dreams and understanding the things and the passions that God's put on his heart. Those things may change as he grows up and decides that maybe he's really good at soccer. Maybe he wants to be a professional soccer player. Maybe he wants to be a lawyer. Whatever he decides to do, it'll be in line with the passions that God has put on his heart. And I love having those conversations with my kids. And that's the lasting impact I want to truly have, is I want to be able to impart a legacy of self-belief that my kids can do things that scare them, that they can do hard things, and they can use their passions to now go out and impact the world. And I believe that that's what we were created to do.
You've been such a joy to have on, Bryce. Lots of great insight, and who knows, maybe we'll have a couple people from this video buy the book. I know I'm certainly going to be on my way to Amazon here in a second. But
Yeah.
Bryce, it's really cool to hear about your story, and hopefully everything goes well with Monster Jam coming up here. And let's keep being you. It's just been a lot of fun to talk with you.
Absolutely. We'll do it again, right? Let's make it a recurring thing. And next time I get to Syracuse, we're getting you back out there. We'll kind of give you maybe a little behind the scenes look and give you the full Monster Jam experience. How's that?
That sounds good. I mean, I don't know if you're on the West Stadium tour, I'm
Yep.
assuming, right? Okay. Well, I mean, I guess I was planning on going to was it the one at the Patriots Stadium? And I think it's
Yeah.
April or something. So, I don't know. We'll have to see.
I don't know if that's on my tour. Honestly, I don't even know my tour. I just know I'm on the West tour.
Yeah.
And we've got some fun announcements to make between now and the end of the year as well, about kind of what truck I'll be in next year and all that fun stuff. So yeah, it's a lot of changes ahead, but all good stuff. So, and that's probably why I haven't even paid close attention to the cities I'll be in. But wherever we are, let's get you out there. That'll be a lot of fun.
Sounds great to me. Our viewers will love it too. Well, I appreciate
There
you
you
taking the
go.
time, Bryce, and good luck the rest of the year. And thanks again.
Absolutely. Thanks, David.
Yep. Thank you. Thanks for tuning in for our conversation with Bryce Kenny. Man, a lot to unpack with this episode. I mean, first off, to go from drag racing to a corporate job to monster trucks is nothing short of one of the most incredible stories you'll ever hear in racing. And it's just a testament to Bryce's drive through adversity to find that calling that he was meant to do. And before we forget, make sure to go and buy his book, Geared for Life. It's definitely going to be on my Christmas list, and it should be for yours as well. And heck, if John Force and Dennis Anderson endorse it, that's more than enough for me to go and check it out. I mean, this has definitely been one of my more enjoyable conversations I've had on this show, and I appreciate Bryce for joining us and being so transparent about his entire life, both on and off the racetrack. Who knows, we may be giving you guys a behind-the-scenes tour at a Monster Jam event in the near future. I'm not hinting. It could happen. Who knows? It'd be interesting to see. Well, that's all the time we have for today's show. Make sure to comment below what you thought of our conversation. Also, stick around and like this video and subscribe. We have a lot more content coming your way very, very soon. If you want even more exclusive racing content, head over to our X and Instagram pages at Behind Catch. Thanks for watching. Have a great rest of your day. Go enjoy some racing, guys, and I'll catch you later.